to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we can forego the policy and welcome people to the October 2017 City Council meeting, October 10th, 7 o'clock p.m. And since there's nobody personal in the audience, we forego the policy at this point. And
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettner.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting agenda. I'll second.
I have a motion, a second. Any
Mr.
comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I just want to clarify on consent agenda 1.4, accepting Mr. Stella's resignation from the Planning Commission. At the workshop, I had asked if we then advertise for openings for every or any committee, commission opening that we have, that is understood that that'll be done.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
We continue to have the Park and Rec opening posted.
That's,
Okay.
it is.
All right, okay, okay.
And that's why I added the disclaimer on this part, so that it was clear that this is what you guys are approving when the
Okay.
consent agenda.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettner.
as long as we're speaking on that subject, I think we'll have to check. I've heard that Malcolm has moved from the city, so we have an opening in the watershed board.
Anything else on the agenda? All right. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Lieutenant, Sheriff's report.
Yes. Well, good evening again, everyone.
Good evening.
Just a quick update for September. Sheriff's deputies responded to 126 calls for service in the city. One of the numbers that it was nice to see was there was only one call in September to bar none. So that's a good thing for us to see after the month prior. And just a few noteworthy calls for service. And I outlined some of these just so you guys get kind of a flavor of some of the things that go on in the city. On the 10th of September at 1:26 hours, deputies responded to a report of a motor vehicle crash at Viking Boulevard and Boss Street. The driver of the vehicle had fled the scene after the crash, and we were very fortunate that a passerby watched where he was going and kind of gave our deputy some information and pointed out where they were going. The deputy ultimately found a male laying in somebody's yard and matched the description of who'd been driving the vehicle. And they suspected he was under the influence of alcohol, and after doing some testing, a preliminary breath test sample was taken of him at a 0.213 alcohol concentration, so nearly 3 times the legal limit. But it was just another one of those cases. The driver was ultimately arrested and refused to take an evidentiary test, breath test. But it was another nice way where we were able to get some very much needed assistance from the public in helping us, and quite honestly get somebody off the road who didn't need to be there. Then on the 15th of the month, a deputy responded to a theft of motor vehicles report, and that was plural, in the 5300 block of 199th Avenue. Multiple vehicles were taken sometime during the night hours. One of the vehicles was a 79 Chevy El Camino, and the other one was a 05 GMC Sierra pickup. Other vehicles and things were located, or at the location, were tampered with. There aren't any suspects in that case at this time. The vehicles were entered stolen into a national database, so if an officer from another jurisdiction runs the license plate number or the vehicle identification number on those vehicles, they'll come back as stolen out of Anoka County, and then we'll be notified. In that case, there aren't any suspects, and the case remains under investigation. And then on the 28th of this month, at about 12:30 p.m., so just after noon, deputies and detectives from our office assisted the Minneapolis Police Department and Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in apprehending a fugitive. The suspect was wanted in connection with multiple sexual assaults and happened to be traveling through this city when they were able to find him. So deputies and detectives from our office were able to stop the vehicle and take that suspect into custody without incident. And that's another, just a case of, you just never know who's traveling through town and where they'll be and what they may or may not be up to. And then just a point of information, I had emailed Corey about this during the month, but the Supreme Court recently ruled on a case from Minnesota regarding a person who was arrested for disrupting a city council meeting. Basically the person was disturbing the meeting and was ultimately removed and arrested by the police. And the case went all the way to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court overturned the conviction, saying that the state's disorderly conduct law was overly broad and wasn't specific enough. And like I emailed Corey, that law is one that we've always used when somebody disrupts a lawful public gathering. And now with the Supreme Court saying that that's overly vague, I asked about the possibility of looking at a city ordinance or something that would specifically address that type of issue. So in the event that that happened here in the city, we would have some type of recourse where we could remove that person and let the public meeting continue as it needs to. So I'm not sure what the recourse is. I'm certain that the League of Minnesota Cities probably has some example language, or I'm not even sure if the council is interested in addressing that, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that that's something that if there was a contentious issue and we had some public meetings that were of high emotional type debate and things, right now we would be lacking any type of legal remedy for helping to make that meeting continue to flow well. So I just wanted to bring that up for the council to consider and make everybody aware of it. So that's all I have.
Any questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Bryan.
Lieutenant, have you heard of anyone in the last few days reporting anything about tree trimming scams?
No, I have
Okay.
not.
It's been lighting up like Facebook and
Okay.
next door in the last few days about somebody coming out saying we'll do some work and then not finishing it.
And what I can tell you is I happen to have a breadth of experience with some people in the tree trimming business and the firewood industry. Actually, I started my career in central Minnesota, where there's a very large population of small organizations that do that. And they're very well known for scamming people, or they may come and sell you firewood at your home or come to do work at your home. And while you're out talking with them about whatever project you have going on, other members of the crew happen to be going into your garage or your house and removing items. And so I'm very careful about saying who's doing that, because it's not all of them. That wouldn't be fair to, there's a lot of good people in that industry. What I would recommend is look for people that are licensed or bonded and insured and have some of that background credentials and I've used places like that myself for work at my own home and been very satisfied with the work, but made sure that they had some of the, even the ones that are very reputable will have references, just like any other profession that you deal with. So I'm not aware of anything new, but I am aware that there's a past history with some of the people in those type of trades with causing problems.
Yeah, this was they come in, start a job, say that they get payment, say, oh, we gotta come back in an hour or whatever, and then just not come back, or
Yep.
start halfway, then leave, and, yeah.
And that doesn't surprise me. Some of the same groups that I'm talking about also got into selling trees. So they would come to your house. What you don't know is they may have gone to somebody up the road who has a large stand of timber on their property, and they would dig the trees off of your property, cut all the roots, tie it up in a burlap sack, then go down the road and sell those burlap sacks with no roots or anything. And we would get calls of people who have just dead sticks in their yard. So it's just, unfortunately, that's one of those, just like any other business, just having to really watch who you hire to do work for you. So, but nothing new that hasn't been experienced in the past would be my best answer. Sorry, I got long-winded there, but
No,
wanted to give you some background on
Yeah,
that.
this, supposedly, their business cards, it's like a shared phone number, and there's 10 other companies that are showing up at the same phone number, and
Yeah. And usually, in my experience, if you have multiple company names at the same phone number for something like that, it's because they have a history and they tend to change their name.
yeah.
So,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Is that something you can bring back to your troops and alert them to at least be aware of that?
Oh, certainly, in the folks out on the street that are taking calls, they're aware of it. They're the ones that end up getting called. Every once in a while, that particular group of people are very transient. They'll come, they don't stay and work up in the areas where they're from usually, they drive down here. So, most of the law enforcement down here is very familiar with their tactics and stuff. And when I worked outstate, we didn't tend to get calls from citizens about it. We got calls from law enforcement down here asking us, who are these people? They're from your town and they're here, so. But yeah, I can certainly mention it to them, but I'm certain that they're well aware of it.
Is it a different group than does the mobile blacktop? People that come up from the south and
Different people, but very same operating styles. Just a different trade they're involved with. But yes, very similar. Just like some of the blacktopping folks we've seen that, they water down their seal coating stuff, and, by the time a week has gone by, it doesn't even look like it was done, or it was just a very, very poor job to begin with. So yeah, very similar. It's a good analogy.
All right, anything else for the lieutenant? Thank you very much.
Would you like me to turn the mic off up here so
Yes,
it
please.
doesn't? If there's nothing else, I'm gonna leave.
Realize we've got a couple of things that we're gonna put on our November agenda. One of them is the sheriff's contract. So I think we didn't have any concerns that were expressed during the budget meeting, so I would expect it to be not confrontational at all.
Okay.
So,
If there's any.
but we've got a couple other budget things we need to wrap up in November here before our December meeting, so
Okay.
that will be one of them.
Might go through a little bit if you bring some cookies and stuff in.
Well, then I should at least get a running list of what everybody likes.
Yeah.
So I bring the right thing.
I'll email you.
Very good. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
You might know where there's a good donut shop.
Do I look like a guy?
My brother-in-law hates that when I comment that. I just know where I see the squad cars all the time, so.
I always laugh at it. I don't take offense to things like that. That's good natured ribbing.
It's the coffee, right?
Yes.
He's there for the coffee. All right, thank you very much.
You bet, thanks.
All right, planning and zoning, proposed subdivision ordinance amendment.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I move adoption of ordinance 2017-03, and that the deputy clerk provide notice to the mayor and city council of all applications submitted and processed under the ordinance.
Second that.
Motion is second. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville?
And I had entered, or said deputy clerk, it would be up to our city clerk to decide who she would have notify us. I said if we did it internally, there would be no additional cost to us.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
Letter B, code enforcement requested direction. Ms. Stockman, our planner, asked for direction in regards to enforcement at Mr. Geyer's location. And I moved that the mayor and Councilmember Rickard arrange for a visit to confirm the homeowner's response regarding the removal of items from the property.
I'll second that for discussion.
Motion and a second. Councilmember Rickard, would you be willing to go on that visit?
Yes.
I would as well.
Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
assuming you're indicating the two of us rather than paying Ms. Stockman to
Correct.
do that?
Correct.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rickard?
in conjunction with that then, based on our conversation at the workshop, being the planner followed our current policy on how we notify people when they have issues or there's a complaint or if there's a code enforcement issue or whatnot, do we want to look at that policy and change that based on the conversation we had at the workshop and kind of form more of an informal letter prior to the formal letter sends out now per the policy?
My understanding from the workshop is that what the planner was going to do is to present that to us, give us a draft for discussion for the next meeting. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryant.
motion to approve the consent agenda as appears on the meeting agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right. The lighting for the ice surfaces. We have an RCA. Do I have a specific motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rickard.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to contact and go ahead with installing power to the warming house and installing lighting not to exceed a $7,500 amount. And for the mayor and myself work with Joe to figure out where the best location for that warming house is.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryant.
one concern I have is if, as I understood it from the workshop, that there would be donated time and materials for installing the poles. And I just, maybe I'm missing something, but I would think that we need to have a resolution for the acceptance of that donation.
Councilmember Rickard, have you spoken to anybody directly
Yes.
in B?
Yeah, the way everything originally worked out, the electrician who has given us the, obviously by far the best price on doing the work, actually is the electrician that A&B uses for, you know, all of their stuff. So he actually contacted A&B directly to figure out and ask and inquire if A&B would be willing to do anything. So it was kind of how that came up, but in talking with Mike Tell this week, Mike basically just said, yeah, they have their metal posts, that they would auger and put in 6 to 8 feet into the ground. They would help set them up, they would help move the warming house once we determined exactly where we want it. He said, let's make sure we pick the right spot so they only have to move it once. But yeah, A and B, he basically said that whatever we need, you know, to work with the electrician and get the warming house moved, they're more than willing to help.
Well, maybe it's part of the motion, when we talk with Joe about the exact location, you and I can talk with, whether it's Bill or Al or whoever at A&B, just to confirm it, and then we'll work with Corey on a resolution for November. Is that sufficient, Councilmember Bryan? I think it does make sense to give it in writing, so.
Mr. Mayor, do you guys know a deadline or time frame in which you're going to discuss the location? Because if we're gonna hire Conexus to get out there, and there's a time frame in which we gotta meet in order for it to be cheaper, we can call them right away. I don't know how far they're out, but, I don't recall what Joe said as far as when
In
the
mid-October,
winter, okay,
which is pretty close here.
yeah.
Yeah, if you could call and see what the deadline is, tell them what we're thinking. It's likely gonna be slightly closer to the poll than originally estimated. Are you in town? So, I'm available, midday is best for me, but,
Yeah. Around, so.
so we can be flexible as we need to be. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan?
I also wanted to just make sure that the lights are complying with city ordinance where they're going down, not out. Is that part of how those LEDs
Yep.
are?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville?
I have a few questions. And I appreciate A&B's generosity, same as I did with the warming house. I do, though, have some questions about the process of how this has occurred. I'd like to know from Councilmember Rickard, how were and how many contractors were requested to provide quotes, and how were they selected?
As far as that, I know, again, our original motion was for staff to find contractors. I know Joe had contacted, and I can't name whom and what his criteria for selecting who he selected. I know some got back to him, some did not, one did, and I was told by, and I can't remember who off the top of my head, to talk to Dependable. And so I contacted them and told them, you know, what we had Meyer Electric looking at. And again, as I stated previous, you know, basically told them what we wanted to do, what our goal was, and then he had contacted A&B about if they were willing to do anything with it.
And once we received a bid from Dependable, who happens to work with A&B, were the other contractors afforded that same opportunity? Because in other words, the bids we have don't really mean much.
And again, you'd have to ask them.
Right.
Dependable works with A&B, so how it was communicated to them and asked, you know, A&B for what, I can't tell you that.
And how was Dependable recommended to you?
somebody at the hockey rink, and I'd have to go back and try to remember who. Because we were talking about it at the hockey rink one day about what we needed to do.
In regards to the Connexus proposal, we don't have anything written from them. We have what they told Joe, but I would think that we should have had a written quote from them. And as far as, you know, when would winter charges kick in and what those winter charges would be. So I don't feel we have enough information there.
That's why I put not to exceed amount.
But again, we don't have a written quote, so.
But again, if we don't exceed the amount that we approved, it shouldn't matter.
So if, I guess the worst case scenario is they come out and it's $3,000 more than what's there, then what do we do? That's why a written quote is important to have. The question on dependables, it says that it's fed from warming house controlled from a time clock or timer or motion sensor, whatever works best according to layout. My question is, the 3 1/4, is that feeding that piece of equipment, or does that include that time clock, timer, or motion sensor? It's not clear, and so,
That's for, that's basically for the installation and equipment for that.
for the equipment, okay.
Because the intent again was, and what was communicated to both companies was instead of having just an on-off switch where if nobody's up there using it, the power is on, it's on some type of timer. So somebody goes up to use the rink, they actually physically have to turn the timer, turn it on, and after a certain period of time, if they're still up there using it, it's gonna turn off, but they'll have to go back and turn the dial again.
Okay, and I think that's an excellent way of doing it. To me, that wasn't clear as to whether it was just the feed from the one to the other, or it also included. Because to me, it's hard to say it's 325 if we don't know what it is that's gonna be installed. And then the lights, I have a question on the lights. We got no specifications, no pictures, no nothing. And so I'm wondering, they're bidding $120 a light. However, for a higher quality light is $500. So, say, based on a scale of 1 to 10, where are these $120 lights? But, because, again, we don't have anything that tells us.
Which is incorrect because there is information on here that if you, it says LE 100 watt super bright outdoor LED floodlights seen on Amazon. If you actually look at that on Amazon, it pulls up that exact light.
Yeah, I did try to Google what was on here, and it came up with all these different pictures, so I don't know what was what. And so again, we don't have any idea, we don't know what it is that we're getting there.
I disagree with that statement.
All right?
Let me just ask a question if I can. So the ones on Amazon, the 100 watt super bright outdoor, is that the 120 watts?
Yes,
And the city can order and supply the lights and save money?
if we wanted to, yes. And actually, the reason I, made my motion not to exceed $7,500 is based on these 100 watt bulbs. They actually make different wattage bulbs that go higher than that. And Dependable says they have a higher, or have this fixture already. So the thought was to actually have them, light
Demo it
one
like
and
this,
see
yeah.
how bright it is, and if need be, we could go up to the next side. If we didn't think that was adequate. But the difference in price was the 100 watt one, or 100, what were they, 150 or 100 watt ones were, what were they, 120 each, and I think up to a 300 watt were just over 200 each. So they had like 4 different wattage bulbs. But obviously, I'd like to
The
see
500 is the quality versus not necessarily the wattage.
What's that?
Says here a higher quality light for approximately 500 each. That's not necessarily 500 watts, it's a higher quality.
No, I understand that, but what I was saying there,
I'm asking.
yeah,
So it's quality, not necessarily wattage that you're.
correct.
The product itself is better. Again, I would like to have had pictures of what it is we're purchasing. And then, back to Councilmember Bryan's comment about the resolution. Our RCA is asking us to recommend that we approve accepting a donation, labor, and installation of poles to mount the lights around the rink. Again, it doesn't say, we've had conversation, but when we originally received this, we have no idea who that is. We don't have anything in writing that specifies what they're going to be doing. We still don't have anything on the poles, what they look like. I'm wondering what we think is the estimated staff time commitment to do it.
To do what?
If we are going to have any staff time involved in this, what is that involvement? Or are we, is Joe, Eric, or whoever going to have any work associated with that? Is there any estimate on that if we are? And then, back to the quotes, I'm just wondering when these quotes, when did we start getting the quotes for it? And were all contractors provided with the same specifications, and are those specifications available to council?
That you would have to ask Joe.
Okay, so when you had your conversation with Dependable, do you know if you asked the same thing that Joe had asked for?
I can't say that I did.
So we have people.
We want lights to light up a rink, Mary, and it's so frustrating, because anything that you wanna do, there's no problem. It flies right through. And we wanna do something to get lights so that the rink can get used probably twice as much as it would without lights. We have a local company who has volunteered to do, as you can see, based on one quote, if we would have somebody else do it, without local business help, we'd be, over $35,000 easily. And we're asking to hook up the warming house and to light up the rink for a maximum of $7,500.
And Councilmember Rickard, I am asking, and I have the right to ask, the same as you have the right to ask on any other item that comes in front of us, and you did plenty of that in September. So I have the right to ask. Again, I don't believe that what is here it is not sufficient for me. It could be sufficient for everyone else. But I have a concern of contractors being contacted. We don't know what the specs were, if all of them were provided the same thing. When they went out, we didn't get them back until Thursday, looks like, was it Thursday and Friday, or the end of last week? So, and did we basically waste mayor's time if we didn't allow them to have the same conversation with the people that are donating the poles? And again, I appreciate the generosity, and I understand that it'll provide for additional use of the rink, but we are still looking at expending funds, and I'm not comfortable with how this occurred. Council directed staff, and then you said you worked with Joe. Tonight we directed you and the mayor to go out on the issue with Mr. Geyer. Typically, council directs a council member or two to work with staff or to work on an item. We didn't direct you, and thank you for taking that initiative, but we didn't direct you. And council, again, isn't provided the information that I feel is sufficient to make a decision.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
I'll make a motion to bring this to vote.
We have a motion to call the motion. Have a second?
I'll second.
All right. So, all those in favor of calling the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries, so we will call the motion. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. So what I would like to suggest in this, and I think what Councilmember Ravenville has a valid point, I think the unfortunate thing that it continues to be related to the ice surface and the structure around that. But I think it is more effective use of our RCA's if we come with a complete packet. You know, what are the specs, the process for the RFQ, who's it going out to, what time frame was given, what parameters were given to all of them as part of the packet. If we're gonna spend money, we should have a formal resolution as part of that RCA. If there's gonna be a contract, that should be part of it. I think this is a good example, or an opportunity to provide an example. And so, rather than beat this particular one to death because there's emotional issues related to the topic at hand, and we get lost in that rather than how to better use our RCA's, what I would request is Councilman Rainville to take an example like this and say, here's what a complete packet in your opinion would be, and bring that back to council for discussion. And say, from now on, when we submit RCA's, whether it's staff or council, these are the details that should be there on the majority of things. If it's a bigger expenditure like this, the money's coming out of park acquisition and development funds, we could include how much funds are left, what kind of revenues are we seeing there, is this a reasonable thing? But my concern is we're gonna lose that opportunity to improve the RCA process because we're using an emotional battleground to do it. And I don't want that to get lost in that. So at this point, we've approved the motion, we'll go on and we'll work with A&B Welding and Joe to see where it goes best here. We can go back and fill in some of this afterwards, but I think going forward, using this as a model, what would we have done differently to come up with a better proposal in the future? Does that make sense? All right. Cat loader,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
motion to approve giving Joe Glaze authorization to purchase a new used cat loader with one of the same size or one size bigger based on the specs in the RCA. Authorizing Joe to work with council members Randy Bettinger and Dan Bryan on the equipment found, inspections, transportation, and purchasing offer of the new or used loader, and work with the city clerk on finalizing the purchase and insurance of the equipment, the price for purchase and transportation not to exceed $72,000.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainbow.
item 5C, a request for council action regarding removal of remaining dirt across from recycling center / fire station. As we discussed at the workshop, we have another contractor that would like to remove the dirt that's of no value, but would like to remove that dirt from our property. I'm asking that we request from the city engineer the following: an estimate as to the cost of producing a grading plan for the area across from the fire station and recycling center. The estimate should include a grading plan for the entire parcel, which includes existing materials So our goal of placing a hockey rink, pleasure skating area, and warming house is achieved along with the usage of the remaining area. Second would be to determine if the existing materials are appropriate to be used as fill on a different lot owned by the city. If I could get a second.
I'll second that. In item B there, I'd like to see it be more specific. If the materials that remain, you're saying existing materials, but what remains of the original mound can be used on the one existing lot. Specifically say, is this dirt sufficient to be, to bring up the building pad on the existing, the one existing city lot? So we're specifically saying, any of this dirt here, can it be used on that one lot? And then the idea in this, the grading plan would be for, until the city decides to build on here, whatever is leveled should be sufficient to grow material that somebody can still harvest it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
I think that's, you're getting ahead of the game. I think this is just for Shane to give an estimate to come up with the plans to do them things.
Yes.
Nothing more. It's not to actually go out and decide if the material's good,
No.
bad, or
No, but I want him to understand, that's what we're looking at ultimately is, what's it gonna cost to determine something like that? Rather than come back later and say, well, I just looked at that dirt there, I didn't think about the other specifics. I just wanted to make sure that he's saying, yeah, I can do all of that for this much money.
along with that, we'd want an estimate for doing the grading, if he's gonna go with the grading plan, so.
Correct.
So what,
Or I mean,
Councilmember Bettinger,
to
you're
do the
saying,
actual grading.
Correct. The grading plan in my thought process will give us the cost of what it will cost us to do that. If he does not provide a free estimate as to what it would be, then the money would come out of the engineering funds, which we currently have a balance of a little over $14,000.
other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Ricker.
I guess, we have that lot, we know, again, I'm not saying and not wanting to give away the dirt if we can use it somewhere else, especially if we can improve and enhance an existing city lot that we have for sale. And again, is the only objective here, again, is to have Shane give us a cost of what he would suspect, right? Because I don't want to spend anything on what I think, we have a lot, by the naked eye, you can easily see where the dirt's got to go, to make that a level lot. Regardless if we have funds in the engineering fund or not, doesn't mean that we have to spend them. So I guess the only thing that I would like to see come out of this is, again, with no cost to the city, is for Shane to say, okay, this is what it would cost for me to come up with this plan. But then not go any further beyond that until we actually determine what that would be.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
To Councilmember Rickard. My goal is to get an estimate from Shane as to what a grading plan would cost for the empty lot, using the existing materials there, whether all of them would be used up on the lot right across from us, or based on the amount of material that's there, if some could be used at the other city lot. But I want just an idea of what he would charge us to put together a grading plan for that lot.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
for him to do that, he's probably gonna wanna know where what's gonna be where. I mean, where's the future building pad for City Hall? Where's this hockey pond or open skating pond gonna be? He's gonna wanna know where all these different items gonna wanna be, or are we gonna want them? And I don't know if we know that yet.
I agree with Councilmember Bettinger. I think a building location is so far down the road. I mean, we have a council, have never had a discussion on putting in a new building. And that continues to come up, and we've never had that conversation. So any construction of a new facility for the city is way, way down the road. But in the meantime, I think it's best that it's important that we know and we are able to best use the property that's there. Take the materials that are on it. It's really too bad that we voted last year to get rid of that pile of dirt without having it looked at. Maybe that would have been able to be transported over to our city lot, but we were told that the dirt was of no value, so we gave it away for free. But apparently it does have value, because people don't take things if there's no value to them. So now we're at a point where we still have an uneven lot, and we want to try to put a skating surface in there. We're not even quite sure where that skating surface is going to be. But in the long run, I think it's smart that we understand how that lot can be used, whether it's the rink, the skating surface, the warming house. Maybe we decide to put parking on there for the winter. What does that take? I mean, I don't know. But to just have somebody come in there and take dirt out and just leave us again without anything, I think is wrong. I think it's smart to have our engineer take a look at it and say, this is what you could do here. If you want to go in more in depth, I would charge you this to go more in depth. But
Which seems reasonable. I mean, we want to know, before we give away any dirt, what's its value to the city, either in this lot or the other city lot. And I think it's reasonable to say, what would it cost us to find that out? What would it cost us to come up with a grading plan? I think the sooner we get to it, the better we're going to be here. So,
I mean, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainey.
we could find out that we don't have enough dirt over there we don't have enough left to be able to level everything out, to put in and I don't remember what size the pleasure rink is gonna be. We may find that we don't have enough dirt left to level everything. I don't know, but that's just something it's something to find out.
It's possible we were hasty in getting rid of the
Yeah, I
mound, but-
believe we were. Yep. Now, I voted for it, so
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rickert?
I don't know if anybody actually went to Central Park and looked at how they do theirs at all, but there's no reason why you can't level a spot very, very easily, or Joe can't with, how he did where the boards are, to put a pleasure rink, parallel to that or right next to it. So as far as talking in, letter A, creating a grading plan for the hockey, Joe's got a level spot. That's a no-brainer, that's easy. It's where the hump is, where they didn't finish, which they were supposed to, is kind of the only area I see in question at all. And again, if you sit in that roadway there and you look, north side's obviously much lower than that. Mm-hmm. And again, so I think we're almost talking about two different things, where we keep talking about creating a level spot for the hockey rink and the pleasure rink. We already have the level spot for the hockey rink. To do a level spot for a pleasure rink next to that, again, is Joe going in with the grader and scraping it off and making a level spot. I don't foresee a pleasure rink being this huge, enormous area that, is gonna require somebody to come in and grade and do all this leveling. And it's just not. Other cities, again, if you go and look at what other cities do, it's not. So again, I think with ease, Joe can go in there and level a spot near where we got the board set up and create a spot for the pleasure rink.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettner?
I agree with Paul. I think Joe could do that now, and that's, if we just go with this, have Shane come with us a plan for grading, I think that's gonna take too long, and we won't have a pleasure rink this winter. And I think Joe could easily go out there, I mean, we could pick a spot, level it out for a pleasure rink. The rest of it, I mean, we could, instead of moving the material now, just go, Joe could go out there with the blade and smoothen that out and reseed it, and it ain't gonna be flat, but you could still drive on it and park on it for the Heritage Day event. I don't think you wanna put parking out there year round. Cause someday somebody will build a building out there, and you don't want to compact all the material down so that you don't have a place to put a sewer. So you shouldn't have traffic on that year round. So, you know, I'd like to see a proposal to move forward and have Joe level a spot out for the pleasure rink, and plan on in the spring, or if we get time yet this fall, which I doubt, to re-level this out here and reseed it.
All right, variety of opinions, we've got a motion. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed to the motion?
Nay.
Okay, motion fails.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bryan.
kind of hearing the discussion, I am hearing two different things going on. One, if there's value in that soil, do we want to give it away? I think the answer is no. Two, if we can put some sort of pleasure rink in with what we have, without having to have the engineer come out and put together a grading plan, then we can put a pleasure rink in. So,
I think it's being short-sighted though. Last discussion, Councilmember Bettinger brought up that this soil may not be good. If you're gonna spread it out on the slot, you may want to take the topsoil off and spread this underneath. That was the point of having an engineer say, this is good soil for this purpose. You can use it as a building pad in your existing lot for sale, or you can bury it on this land, put your topsoil back over it, and have a decent cultivated or hayfield that's also used for ice rinks. You've got enough material here to level it out and keep your topsoil on the top and this stuff underneath. And that was why we want to have an engineer, rather than just have Joe go over there and start pushing dirt around. Because we don't know what we're gonna end up with on the top there. You know, we were told this dirt was good enough to give away because nobody wanted it for anything. It wasn't good for anything. And now we got people contesting for it. We were told it's no good. It was dumped over here because it was drawn off these lots as waste material. It was put in this mound for years as waste material. Now we're gonna spread it on the top of the soil for the sole purpose of leveling out the ice rink. Now, I don't know if this dirt is necessary for that, or we just want to level what's next to the hockey rink for a skating rink, but I would like to see a plan to, is this dirt any good, first of all, and if it is, what's it good for? And if it can help us sell that other lot, I'd like to take it over there. I definitely don't want to give any more away if we need it on this lot or over there. But the point to me of having an engineer look into it is to say, if truly people are concerned about our last lot not having a level pad or a pad high enough to build on, we can remedy that and make that lot more sellable. And if this dirt should be buried underneath topsoil, we'd like to know that too. And I don't know that Joe just pushing it around with a grader can do that. I do believe Joe can flatten out a spot next to the hockey rink to get us a nice surface for this winter,
Mr. Mayor.
separate from next. Councilmember Rickard.
Sorry to cut you short. And I don't disagree with what you just said, but in the RCA, that's not the way the RCA is written and proposed. So again, I'm not opposed to having Shane give us an estimate of what a grading plan would cost and if that dirt's worthwhile moving. And again, I'm not over to the other lot to make that lot more value. It's just, I don't think we need to do any of that in order to have Joe level a spot for a pleasure rink.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Bettinger.
is, you know, by getting a grading plan put together now and moving the material around, we don't know what's gonna be built on that lot someday. So why do it now? Why don't you wait until the lot develops someday, and then you move the material once? If you move it, it's gonna cost thousands of dollars to move this material around, especially if you move it down to another lot. Why move it around once or twice? You wait till you develop your lot, you get a grading plan, and you do the work. I mean, this is, to me, it's premature, unless you know what we wanna do over there exactly with the whole lot, and I don't think we do.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Angel.
to council, excuse me, to Councilmember Bettinger's comment, maybe it is premature, but based on the RCA that we had at the workshop, we were gonna look to give it all away. So instead of giving the rest of it away, like we gave the first part of it away, let's do something that is smarter for the city, and look at what the options are, for that lot, for the materials that are on that lot. Excuse me, but, my motion, failed, so if somebody wants to bring forth another motion to do something different, then that's their prerogative.
Well, I think the other thing is we're not actually talking about moving the dirt, we're saying what makes sense. We were told the reason we're having trouble selling that lot is it's low. And the engineer can say, yeah, it's a bunch of people just trying to get out of they put money down, they want their money back, and they got a better deal somewhere else, it really isn't that low. But I'd rather have an engineer say, yeah, that lot's buildable just as it is, or put contingent, somebody putting an offer on it, we'll provide the dirt to bring it up, so they don't have to haul it in from somewhere else. But I think it does make sense to have the engineer weigh in on, what we have here on this lot and what we have over there, and say, before you give away any of that dirt, here's what you can do with it. Or it's totally worthless dirt for your purposes, give it away if anybody wants to take it. But I'd like to hear that from the engineer, rather than say, and again, I don't know that this conflicts with putting in a pleasure lane. If there's enough material right where we've got it to just level out what basically is where people parked last year. We can put in, doesn't have to be the size of the hockey rink. It's certainly in our first year while we're trying to figure this out. But to me, it makes sense to have the engineer weigh in on it and say, it's good for this, it's not good for that. If you're gonna do it here, you've gotta remove the topsoil and put it underneath, or this is perfectly good to go on top. Because we've heard a lot of different things about the value of this soil, why it was hauled off the lots that it was to bring over here. It was no good, it's good enough for this. And I would like to at least hear from a professional who works for the city to confirm at least one of the things that we've heard about the soil and the lots. Councilmember Bettinger.
It doesn't hurt anything to leave that material sit right where it is. Smooth it out so that you can use that space for parking or whatever. Smooth it out, seed it, leave it where it is. And that decision can be made later based on the needs. There was one of the other lots or buildings that were built just last year, in the last couple of years, that the person building that come over and looked at that pile of dirt, and he decided it wasn't good enough to build his building pad on it, so he wouldn't use it. Does that make the material totally useless? No. You can use it for fill. I mean, you could build a house, and you could use it for filling around a house, but you wouldn't build that to build your building pad to put your house on. But, I mean, what the material's there could be determined at some other later date. We don't have to do nothing with it, just smooth it out and use it until we're ready to develop it. Then.
Yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but in one of our previous meetings, we talked about just smoothing it out, and you said, if we're gonna do that, we should pull back the topsoil and spread this out underneath it and put the topsoil back.
Right,
On this lot.
That's if we decide to move the material from where it's at. Yes, you can't just put it on top of topsoil, you shouldn't.
Yeah, if we would take this from here and move it over to the other
Yeah.
lot.
You'd remove your topsoil and find a place for this and put your topsoil back on top for materials, for things to grow on it.
Now, we were talking about keeping it on this lot, just leveling it into the low spots.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
You
Councilmember Ricker.
don't cover topsoil up.
well, in your conversation, and nowhere in this RCA was any action or request for the city engineer to look at the other lot and tell us if it was buildable or not either. So now we're kind of introducing
No,
something else.
That's what I had said.
No, I understand.
It was item C on here, to see if it had any value on that lot. I don't know if, like I said, the people that said they'd have to bring in too much fill to use that lot, I think they actually just wanted their money back because they got a better deal up in St. Francis.
But like I agree with Randy, is if we do or Shane would come in and say, yeah, you know, it may make sense to move it over. It is gonna cost quite a bit because you do have to do a lot of work over on that lot first prior to moving that dirt.
Well, I'm not asking to move it over there, I just want to know what the options are.
Mr. Mayor?
Discussing options doesn't mean we're doing things, we want to know what reasonable, cost-effective options are and say, okay, if we want to spread it out in this lot, we should peel back the topsoil, level it out, and put the topsoil back. You know, that option would cost whatever. This dirt would be good in that lot, make it more sellable, or it would make a hill beans difference, they're gonna bring in something. If we had it here and they wanted it, it might be a bargaining chip. I would just like to know what those options are, I'm not saying we're gonna do any of them. But if we don't know what the options are, right now we're talking about, it's pretty vague on, we could do a lot of things. You know, we can spread it out, but if we spread it out too far, we really should be removing topsoil and spreading it and then putting topsoil back. What does that cost? Councilmember Rainville.
Mr. Mayor, on my request for council action, letter B said determine if the existing materials are appropriate to be used as fill on a different lot owned by the city. So that wasn't.
And that's why I asked you to be more
That's not what
specific.
Jeff stated. Jeff-
Okay, well, I'm just
Jeff-
saying that I did ask them to do
No,
that
that's
now.
not, I
Are we
stated
able
that,
to use that over there at the other lot?
Councilmember Rickard?
Motion to adjourn.
I have one other question, based on all of this discussion on grading and Joe doing this and Joe doing that. I guess, what is the thought of what size is the pleasure rink going to be? Because until we know that, we don't know what Joe needs to level out. And I think that the council should have a discussion as to what size the pleasure rink is going to be. What are we thinking? I know there was, back in Park and Rec, when Paul was liaison, there was conversation about the size. There was, but I don't remember that off the top of my head, what the size was.
well, again, I've made comments several times for council members to go to Central Park and see what they do up there. Has anybody done that?
It's a little difficult to do that right now.
No, it's not. You go up and you can see exactly where they have their pleasure rink sitting.
Are you able to? Okay. All right.
It's right on the, what would that be, west side. It's not very big. It's probably a quarter of what the thing about, one thing nice about what we have here, there's no one around other than us who has a boarded surface as big as we do. A full-size sheet. Everybody else is smaller than that. So realistically, depending on how many people you can get, you can easily divide that in half, and hockey played on half and skate on the other. But to do my initial, I don't think you need to even come close to that same size for a pleasure rink. Probably a third that.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just remember as a kid, which was a few years ago, our pleasure rinks were much bigger than the hockey and/or broomball rinks that were in the park at the time. But I came from Minneapolis, and we, they used what was a four-cornered softball field, and other than one hockey rink, the rest was the entire pleasure rink. Now, that was back when, everybody and their brother was up skating. We don't have that like we used to do. We used to.
But again, Minneapolis's rinks aren't nearly that big.
I'm not saying anything about that. Yeah, we don't have indoor boards outdoors in Minneapolis, that's for sure.
They're not necessarily indoor boards.
Okay,
either,
well,
so.
we could go through that again. What I'm saying
don't say
is
it.
that, well, they aren't indoor, they are indoor boards that we're using outdoors. Yes, they are, Mr. Councilmember Ricker. So my question again is, what size pleasure rink are we going to have? What is the council going to have a discussion as to what size the pleasure rink is gonna be so that our staff knows what area to level out? I second the motion to adjourn.